Episode 19, Passion.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Actually, here he is. Welcome to the 19th episode of the very best podcast in the world. Personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness, or to, or about, or whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised you a cool episode today, but I'm going to replace it with an even cooler episode. The reason being, I decided to pull the cool episode. I just have these two versions of comparison. So I pulled the cool episode because a little more research was due. I recorded it and wasn't really convinced about it. So I'm going to re-record it probably close to a dozen times until it finally meets my personal anal standards about quality and whatever. So here is episode 19, Passion, which is not the passion of life, nor is it, does it have anything to do with intimate relationships. It's based on a discussion I had with a dear friend close to a week ago, I guess. And we were debating about professional situations. Now, this friend was actually a neighbor many years ago and has had this really, really, really impressive career roller coaster ride. I wouldn't call it anything less. He started out with a bad school, bad school grades, did a vocational training, then worked his way up to becoming an insanely gifted engineer. And I really like talking to this person because he's gifted in so many ways. It's really nice speaking with him. But the reason I'm creating this episode is one topic that we ended up discussing, which I think can be called no less than passion. Probably a more apt term would be professional passion. But I think that could be misleading in that you can be passionate, and you have to be passionate if you really want to make it in the world. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. And here's why. So our discussion about passion started out with an example of the friend of mine who, as I said, is a very gifted engineer, sitting in the Sony Center in Berlin in a cafe, looking up at the skylight structure, and really in his mind started to think of how he would construct such a complex geometric structure. I don't know if you've never seen the Sony Center in Berlin. Look it up on Google Images. It's really impressive just being there. Long story short, he was contemplating how this structure was built, how it was planned, all of the steps that went into the project management, and so on and so forth. The structure is really impressive. Like I said, if you haven't seen it, look it up. And if you really want to be impressed, go there. So, as a piece of life advice, when this whole COVID thing is over, then we can all travel again, hopefully, and whatever. Long story short, we then, about 2 hours later, came to one of his interns that he was hosting, and that this person was really someone who would sit there, have his coffee, walk out, without, noticing the impressive structures, but not making the connection of sitting down or making the effort of really sitting down and taking such a complex piece of engineering apart and trying to reassemble it. Now, this guy, this intern, wants to be like him. And he's probably never in his life going to reach that stage, because his worry what is more about work-life balance and getting home on time to his computer games and whatever he does in his free time. And of course, that speaks for him. He's lacking the experience. This kid was in his early 20s, but it doesn't really start to explain what you need to be passionate about it. And that, for me, I reflected that onto my situation when I was a kid. There were no programs on computers or anything of that sort. You had to make a lot of the stuff that you wanted to have. And this was pre-internet times. So you had to go to the library, check out wagons of books on how to learn programming, and you got a new computer and you had to learn all new languages. But once you had gotten a grip of the logic in the programming bit, it didn't become self-explanatory, of course not, but logic is the thing that you have to understand. But you have to understand how the machine works, what the resources are, and so on and so on and so on. And you can only do this by passion. You can't do it in a university. Sorry, all of you who are listening to this and are studying hard on their degrees. That's going to get you a job, right? But it's not going to get you a profession. And that's what's missing with so many people out there in the workforce today. And this was one of the issues that we were discussing at the table over dinner. And I don't know, some really enlightening moments came to us, and it came to a point where we even thought whether we were dinosaurs in the workforce. And he said that on one occasion. And I found it rather funny because, we're getting old. He's in his early 50s. I'm in my early 40s. But I think those people are still out there. And I think that this passion has to be awoken in a lot of people. Of course, not in everyone. Not everyone is out there to make a difference and to change the world. A lot of you are out there to make a living, buy your new gaming console or your new computer to play your computer games, and then you do your life thing, your work-life balance thing. Eventually you retire, then you have another 10 years of retirement where you can play computer games or, whatever all day long and without any distractions whatsoever. And then you die. And for me, this model was never really something that I would even consider to be satisfactory. So therefore, whenever I started a new chapter in my life, or a new life, as I have repeatedly called it, because it de facto is just a totally different life that I started on multiple occasions. It's really interesting to how passion can drive you towards really quickly establishing stuff and making the connections to things that you've learned in your previous chapter, in a previous chapter of your life, or in a different life altogether that you've had before this one. Now, there's a bit of a contradiction in terms, because technically you can only fit one life into a lifetime, but let me tell you that there's more. And I briefly went into it in the Q4L episode. If you haven't looked that up, somebody asked me how or what different lives I spoke about, sorry. And I briefly touched on them, but there's, of course, so much more and so much more detail. And if you're passionate about something, your life intensifies significantly in that you're not just there to, you're not just at your job to make a living and get your paycheck and, that's just not the point. Of course, you can do that. And there's nobody who should try and move you into anything but. It's your decision. It's your life. You're in total control over it, and you should be. So getting back to the conversation we had, I think we're not dinosaurs. I think there are a lot of passionate people, passionate professionals out there. And for those who wish to become passionate or a passionate person rather than a job person, let me tell you that it's really rewarding. It's insanely stressful, the first bit. But if you learn to harness your passion and focus your energy towards a problem or a new situation in your life, the outcome is just amazing. Because from learning the procedure of becoming passionate, you can change your life pretty much any day. You can get out of the one you're in. You can start a new life, start a new profession altogether, start a new hobby. But it's about this getting yourself up off the couch, learning to make yourself free from distractions. When I'm talking about mass media, and I'm talking about social media, and I'm talking about computer games. Now, again, I'm going to have to make a quick break here because I'm not demonizing any of it, right? Computer games, I do play. I used to play them a lot when I had more time, but the life I'm in currently is just so inhibiting that I hardly have time, but I do enjoy it significantly. It's just that I have to watch out for myself and try not to get into games that are too time consuming. There are quick games that you can do, and they're challenging, and they're good for your brain, and they're good for your memory, and they're good for your reflexes, and so on and so forth. Just don't get too carried away in them. That's, I think, the part that I'm trying to say. And getting back to the original thought, it's really going to be interesting for you to make this transition from a job person to a truly passionate person, period. Because now we're going to start the next son of a bitch, which is that once you're passionate about something, you have to make a decision whether it's going to be the passion that guides you and that motivates you, and that the normal payment that you're going to get is going to be sufficient for you. Because here's the catch. There's going to be 10 people like you in different departments. We're going to get the same amount of money for significantly less work. Simply because of your passion, you're going to be so much better. You're going to excel so much faster that it's going to be frustrating. Now, here's the decision you're going to have to make for yourself. If you're passionate, if you caught on fire, let's call it that. If you caught the passion fire, what do you want to do with it? Are you going to offer it for a medium wage to an employer? Or are you going to start your own business? Or what are you going to do with it? The reward doesn't have to be monetary. It can be even as much as the personal satisfaction you get out of it. But it can also be the satisfaction of other people that you may get out of it. And that's a really interesting part. Putting a smile on somebody's face, helping somebody out, is so significantly rewarding. Take a priest, for instance, or an imam, or other spiritual teachers. They're usually not well paid. Well, they're paid okay. They can make a living, a decent living, but there's a lot of downsides that come with a job. But for a lot of these people, it's just about helping others. And that for them is passion. And that for them is the results of the smiling people, and the people they helped is rewarding. And it's just a personal story that that came to my mind about a country that I was staying in and working in for a while. And I was stuck for a time. And I went into the mosque and just looked for the imam and invited him for tea because I had quite a few questions about that religion. And we sat down for tea for about 3 hours, I think, until evening prayer started. And I really asked him a lot of questions, and that's where he said, well, I'm not paid well, but for me, it's most rewarding to help people out, and that's my passion. And so that's where I think we're going to kind of close this episode, because everything's said. It's upon you to make the decision for yourself. Do you want to have a job, or do you want to be really passionate? And with that thought, I think I'll leave you to have a good night or a good day, wherever in the world you are. And if you have any questions or feedback or whatever, please send them to theverybestpodcastintheworld@gmail.com. And other than that, I shall hear you tomorrow, hopefully, because it's fucking exercise time and it's going to be so fucking exciting. And I hope I'm more excited tomorrow to come with you. Not that I'm not excited now, but I'm very reflected upon this conversation still and have to kind of work on digesting the outcome. In that sense, speak to you tomorrow.